Hey, family, thank you so much for joining us today. Welcome to the Brotherly Exchange podcast. I am your host for this week, MeIsMe, and I'm with my four colleagues here. And we're going to chop it up today about some news, some current events. Obviously, the biggest and the hottest topics from Shannon Sharpe got his groove back like Stella did back in '98 to also Shedeur Sanders and other controversy we're in. And then we even have a special social commentary that our brother Scoon is going to lead us off with after we get into the current events. So without further ado, Unc, Scoon, Ill, Brolic, y'all ready?
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
All right, bet. So to kick it off here with some current events, I found it very interesting that Brandeis University has started a Love Black Men art project. Essentially, and I'll read a quick look from the article itself. There was a sister by the name of Ifosa Alongboseri or Bosser. Sounds like a South African or Nigerian sister. I can't really tell. But she was on her college campus and she noticed that there was not a lot of Black male representation. And she's quoted by saying, Black men on campus weren't as represented as other demographics. I wanted to honor and celebrate them through the lens of photography. Brothers, tell me about your experience not having someone who looks like you in the room. How do you navigate that? And are we kind of surprised that, a sister went to bat for brothers like that? I'm not saying sisters don't, but, sometimes some of them speak as if being a Black woman is its own independent race of being in the Black community. That being said, Clark, Ill, jump in and tell me what you think about this news story, man.
Oh, sure. Well, I think that the fact that she's a photographer, she's a little bit more mindful of images of Black men on campus. So I think that it would make sense for her to take that to task. Other people may not be as mindful of that, but the fact that she is a photographer, it was a really good, based on what I saw, it looks like it was some really good images, and she captured different Black men in different facets and different ages. So I really think that she did a good job bringing more awareness to Black men in the community.
I love it. Scoon, what you got to say about that, man?
So I just finished checking out the article on Brandeis, and that's nice. Like, it's good to see the general sentiment being spread towards our younger brothers in this case. Really nice candid shots from what I was looking at. Captured joy, adds more dimension than our usual template. So really rare to see that kind of solidarity. Want to see more of it.
100%. I'll tell you what, man, it was really great. One of my favorite places or pieces of art, for those who are listening and don't know, I'm based out of Atlanta. Your boy MeIsMe, and one of my favorite murals is a mural that says "Thank you, Black men." Big black wall and all white letters, and it like goes down a stretch of highway here in Atlanta. So I
Nice.
love that. Have y'all? I mean, how did you guys, looking back as adults to your childhood, how did you guys navigate not seeing yourself reflected? Before anyone jumps in, I remember for myself, one of the reasons why I fell in love with professional wrestling as a child was because there was this weighing in as 275 pounds, standing at 6'5" from Miami, Florida. The Rock was someone that I could identify with. How did y'all do it, man? Were there any like subconscious or conscious, role models y'all had?
Well, just on the you mentioned wrestling. When I look at, I think we've all taken cues from like athletes.
Right.
Those are the first, like Magic Johnson had a indelible effect on me because he actually wrote a book called Magic's Touch that was really important for me. But basketball players, of course, athletes, but in terms of representation outside of that scope, I don't think I saw a lot of diversity. And that young sister was showing different men in her community, not just athletes or just working class and different types of Black men in different settings, which is what she did, which is important.
Completely agree. And I think another interesting tidbit of the story before we bounce to another headline is you know, the culture war or the inspiration of a culture war was really inspired and ramped up during the last election. Obviously these sorts of hot button issues, because they get people inflamed and get them motivated to go to the polls, they usually come around every election cycle. But, with our president and commander in chief right now, he seems to really kind of strike that nerve on a racial tidbit. That being said, though, his administration has been very vocal about the elimination of DEI. But it's funny, us as young Black boys, then young Black men and Black men of today, we've never really had an opportunity to even point to DEI and say, hey, that program worked for me. If you guys are unaware, the vast majority of DEI beneficiaries are white women. I believe it says less than 4%, I forget which subcategory or group, but less than 4% of them actually went to Black people, not Black men, Black people. What do y'all think about that?
This is brother Unc, man, and yeah, I definitely agree and see that in professional settings. Again, today, I work in asset management, and it's pretty fascinating when you go into a room and you typically expect to see the vast majority of the participants in there to be white males, but I was struck today by a meeting I attended. Again, these are asset managers, individuals who are making well over $1 million. 12 individuals, including myself. Again, I'm not making that type of money. I'm doing okay, but not like that. Out of those 12 individuals, 10 of them were white women. And it just goes to show you that, these opportunities are not being obtained by Black people, let alone Black men. So I 1000% agree with that, and I have tons of stories on that. But I was just blown away at different points, taking that in and viewing it live in person, and just hearing how these women had essentially either been given their opportunity through nepotism. It's something that happens in asset management, or through programs which they were able to take advantage of.
I have more of a question with you guys being so informed. So is the whole, I remember back in the day, like 2006, 2007, people, white people specifically, kind of complaining about, oh, you guys have affirmative action, which I never really saw, even to this day, Black people like, kind of not necessarily taking advantage, but like succeeding off of, affirmative action, quote unquote. And now with the DEI thing, which I was ignorant of until this year, honestly, it seems like it was kind of, I guess, BS. Like them, you guys get affirmative action, you guys get affirmative, but this entire time, white women were benefiting from DEIs, which wasn't even meant for them. So I don't know if you guys can answer that. Like, what is the whole affirmative? Was that just kind of a myth? Is that kind of a BS gift to us?
Go ahead, bro.
So from what I've seen in academia, affirmative action mostly comes in the form of internships, especially if you're like at a institution that's more so like linked with your state government or wherever it's located. I've seen this at UMD&J, I've seen this at Rutgers, and they usually have like some strict, I guess, like ratio policies. So that's one of the few scenarios I've seen it. I have not seen a lot of people of color, and my mother has worked with UMD&J and Rutgers for at least 20 years. So the 15 plus years on and off, just visiting, doing stuff at the studies, rarely see people of color. I do see a lot of women. They're mostly Asian, I would say like East Asian, Indonesian, Lebanese, Israeli, not too many sisters. If I do see them, they're more admin. And then to speak to your point, Brolic, when it comes down to the perception of things like DEI and the like, seems like a weird mix of from what I've seen on LinkedIn, like white dudes talking about it, like some kind of like strange propaganda, or I guess like folklore behind it that's not backed by reality. Plus I guess mostly responses to white women. Like it's rarely Black women I really see them getting into it over DEI with.
It's interesting. A common theme, the audience is going to hear tonight is the more things change, the more they stay the same.
Yes.
I remember back in the 80s, Ronald Reagan and the Republican Party, they needed to pivot to a different political strategy that allowed them to win more elections, especially considering they were under threat because it became very clear that they were representing the party of big business and Wall Street and not the everyday American on Main Street. That being said, a part of their culture wars back then was the welfare queen. And they made black women the face of it. They made the black community the face of it. And it was typified or defined as lazy people who know that they can work, know that they're capable, intentionally taking advantage of the system using taxpayer funding money. And we see the same thing here with the battle on DEI. They made black folks the face of it
while they benefit.
Exactly. And to your point, they were the biggest beneficiaries. So
wait, before you continue, I have a question.
Yes, sir.
For everyone. Did y'all see anything about the lawsuit that led up to affirmative action getting shot down?
No, I did not.
Oh, so
yeah.
Wow, really? Wow. Okay, so pretty much super conservative white dude talked up the Asian communities that have political presence along the West Coast to kind of like represent in court for them to make a case against affirmative action. Things got shot down, and one of the first things that happened were almost all the programs that their kids would get into for admissions went to legacy.
Exactly.
Just want to throw it out there. Is it?
No, that's a good point. And I do know that for the past few years, there have been some lawsuits lobbied. So that's just been something to kind of keep people on their toes. I know that specifically when it came to the Supreme Court ruling on, students for fair admissions versus Harvard and the students for fair admissions versus the University of North Carolina, that is kind of what got the ball rolling with this elimination of DEI. So I definitely think it was a coordinated political stunt and attack that ultimately may even hurt some of those in the Asian community who thought they had allies in this fight when really they were just being used. Another pivot today, guys, for the this week's conversation. Interestingly enough, speaking of politics, Alabama's new congressional district empowers black voters. A court ordered redistricting in Alabama has resulted in new congressional district providing black voters in 2 majority black cities with representation in Congress. This is phenomenal. Have you guys heard of this? Kind of what's going to be the changing landscape now that seemingly in one of the deep South states of this country with a storied racist reputation is actually giving more power to black folks?
Wow. That is monumental. That's all I gotta say about that. That is a really big, almost paradigm shift.
Yeah, I'm very skeptical. I think Alabama is one of the poorest states next to Montana. I'm not completely sure, but it sounds possibly desperate. But again, I'm always skeptical of things like that.
Well, isn't that based off of, census, the redistricting? Somebody can correct me on that. I'm just curious. Okay.
That is correct. But there's this political term called gerrymandering where So for our audience members who may or may not be aware, gerrymandering is a political term where politicians purposely cut up a district in a way that favors them basically getting elected. Republicans do it, Democrats do it. No party immune from that. But yeah, it is very interesting.
Well, I mean, there are some changing population aspects in Alabama. I visit Alabama quite a bit. I mean, any opportunity to put black people in a better position is always key. My only issue, or not issue really, is just question is, what does that quote unquote do for us? And again, for those of you who don't know about me, I'm very much so. I like to call myself an independent. I challenge and question a lot of things, specifically politically. I think this is always positive, but the question is, how does this impact us from a congressional aspect? Power is great, seats great, but where's the impact? And of course, how does that, translate to the rest of the state and the rest of the district? So again, I think any of that's good where we can maintain or have representation. If because again, gerrymandering is odd. If you pay attention to a lot of other districts, they will cut through neighborhoods to incorporate some of those rural spots. It's the flip side when you see something blue go to red. I just hope it means something. So no, good stuff to share. I just hope it's material.
I was just gonna ask. Alabama is consistently red, correct?
Very much so.
Very much so. So this is an opportunity to kind of switch it more towards blue
Yeah, yeah.
because
I
it's not going to
mean,
go
yeah.
independent, obviously.
No, no. Well, you're talking about the idea of a state going maybe it being a toss up
Not a
state,
yeah,
purple.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, or
Alabama, and again, it's not impossible. You would think it would make sense when you look at southern states where there's a
never.
higher concentration of black people. I mean,
Yeah.
and by the way, in the past, there was a Democratic senator who won a seat, and I don't know if it was a special election, white gentleman, but there have been recent examples of Democratic senators. But just when we talk about representatives, it's a good thing. Like I said, it's always good. But the question is just what's the impact, and how does that truly materially impact black people? Because Democrats have had power, they've had the majority. Just what does this do for us? But again, I appreciate the topic. It's something interesting to ponder.
It is.
The last thing on this is just thinking about. No, I don't think anytime soon Alabama will become a blue state. However, if some of those congressional members can at least get some laws passed that allow set-asides for them to serve the black community in Alabama, I'm for it. And ultimately, that's what Congress should be about. You can't win every battle, but if we don't have the executive branch, it's not the end of the world as long as those who are representing those black Alabamians, if that's the correct terminology, as long as they're getting something passed with extra pork on a bill or just some good measure that it really helps improve the livelihoods of those black folks, I'm cool with it. That being said, the last news topic before we jump into this week's controversies, if you will, is the U.S. economy contracts amid tariff concerns. The U.S. economy shrank by 0.3% in Q1 of 2025, marking the first decline since 2022. Economists attribute this to businesses stockpiling ahead of new tariffs, leading to a record high trade deficit. Guys, what are y'all seeing? What are y'all feeling? How are these tariffs affecting you?
Again, I'll jump back in. I mean, yeah, this is something that is definitely on our minds. We experience it every single day. We go out in the grocery store, the gas station.
Mhm.
Again, speaking to the economy, and based on our forecast, we believe that we would see the economy contracting. And I'm speaking now from a work aspect again. And I'll even go a little bit further over the next, let's call it 3 to 5 years.
Yes.
We're going to see the United States have a contraction in terms of GDP. Now, keep in mind, though, you're going to see what some people would argue a growth recession. This is where GDP comes in under 2%.
Mhm.
However, the United States will still technically be, quote unquote, and again, quotes, exceptional compared to other G7 countries, right? And again, we know that some of those European businesses are doing well, but again, there's a lot of friction in terms of what will happen in other G7 countries compared to the United States. So we'll still be the big dog, but we're going to slow down. And I think when you think about the big picture, I tend to go big picture when I talk about this stuff. Again, you've got to keep in mind that we're not going to be in a situation where the government can continue to pump so much money into the economy, right? Fiscal and monetary policy is going to slow down. In fact, if there ever is another instance where we need that type of support, there's no appetite for it. And it goes back, and it really just stems from the fact that we've got a significant amount of debt that we've got to overcome, right? And again, that's contributing to what we're seeing along with the tariffs, right? This isn't just one thing that you can point to, but when you look at just what's happening in the United States, right, the amount of debt that we've compiled, the interest expense, right, that we haven't resolved or figured out, and then of course the entitlement programs
Right.
that we have to continue to fund to make sure that the most vulnerable Americans are not left out there. We've got a lot of issues, but yeah, the rollout of these tariffs again, which for the most part, Trump. If you understand Trump, he's somebody who's always looking to bluff. I think at some point we got to learn that don't take Trump serious, right? He's not a big dog on the political stage, but these tariffs have been rolled out in a very clumsy fashion. And yeah, that is creating a lot of turmoil. So again, sorry for jumping in on this, but I just wanted to speak to what we're seeing broadly. But yeah, it is definitely slowing things down.
No, that was well said, man. Thank you for providing that super clear picture. And I think this also ties into what you were saying about the bond market's performance as of like recently.
Oh yeah. And again, this is a pretty fascinating time to, be involved in the markets. You definitely will see opportunity in the bond market. The bond market is actually bigger than the stock market. This is my side of the game. And part of the reason for that is governments issue bonds, right, to fund um, investments in either people, capital, or improvement, right? The United States is constantly taking on additional debt to keep up the lifestyle. But again, I've made a joke, man. The United States is broke. We're out here living on a credit card, and you can't keep doing that. So that's got to stop. And that's also a contributing factor to a lot of the shakiness we're seeing in the economy. So we've got to figure this out one way or the other. Trump is looking to shake things up. But this is really not Trump. And I have to say this, it's not really Trump. It's actually Bessent, right? His Treasury Secretary. This is actually his idea.
Right.
Trump is merely just a figurehead. And the thing about Trump is Trump doesn't care if we hate him. So unpopular policy, believe it or not, Trump's the right guy for it, because whether or not it works, he doesn't give a damn. So just throwing that out there. I know a lot of people hate Trump. I'm not the biggest fan of him, but he's a guy that just doesn't give a goddamn. So we need to hear from Bessent, the Treasury Secretary, who's got an interesting background. But that's the guy who should really be talking about what is your plan around this tariffs and again fixing the quote unquote trade imbalance. How does that help? Because we all know, and this is true, tariffs will increase costs.
Fact.
No, I completely agree with you. And, I'm curious to see the slow burn and churn of his support. I believe he has the lowest approval rating of any president coming out of the first 100 days. Depending on what poll you look at, even the more favorably conservative polls have him at 39% approval. If you look at some other polls, they have him as low as 34, 35%. And keep in mind, the guy has just been in office for over 10 days. Interestingly enough, though, to your point, Unc, is Peter Navarro is actually his trade advisor. He was flagged a few weeks ago when the stock market had crashed as a fraud for his book. I think that the name of the book, one of them was called Death by China. And what he does is he references a well-known and respected historical economist named Ron Vera, who they found out is not only fake, but is an anagram of his last name. So what makes this incredibly disheartening and stupid, so much so that you have to laugh to keep from crying, is that we literally have the president of the United States ruining our reputation as a nation, of the leader of the free world, because he seems to be narrowly stuck on this economic theory that has been proven time and time again not to work, and got his information from a person that lied in their own book, which inspired Trump to hire him in the first place, about this so-called economic expert. So all this leads to this. How are y'all doing with the price of eggs? Are you surviving?
I bought maybe 15 items at the store today. Typically, back in the day, it would probably cost me like $25. Avocados, cheese, couple diet type of sodas, whatever. Shit cost me like $65. My cart, not even the actual large cart, like those new recession mini carts, the little double stack ones. Shit wasn't even full. Cost me over $60. This shit is trash.
Wow. Ill, go ahead, man.
Yeah, thank you. I wanted to just ask, because I've been out of the country for a year, but you were talking about Trump's first 100 days, and Unc had mentioned, the strategy he's using for the tariffs. I think it's completely demoralized a lot of people who were supporting him. Based just my view from outside the country. Now, passing through Central America, like being in Mexico and then currently in Guatemala, a lot of these people are pissed at him.
Yeah.
You know, they don't have any hostility toward me, but I'm just based on the his strategy. It just seems like he's totally demoralized people. Even I think Candace Owens of all people spoke out against Trump. I mean, you know, she's I don't mess with her too much, but I was just saying, look, I thought he started really good. I was really excited about the way things were going, and then this tariff war and the way he went about it, it just totally demoralized so many people.
Could not agree more. I will say on a separate note, the grift is real with Candace Owens. I think she kind of tries to read the tea leaves, politically speaking, and tries to hop on that bandwagon before everyone else, so that way she can have some semblance of credibility. She can say, "Oh no, I disattached myself from Trump long before it was a cool thing to do," because you're starting to see that shift in a major way. A lot of resentment towards his administration.
Well, I'm going to jump in though. I mean, that's pretty interesting. I don't know if that's 1000% true. Again, we're early on. I don't think there is this "we hate Trump" thing. Again, I work with money, and I work with a lot of people. I'm not hearing "we hate Trump," and I think again we have to identify some of the sources. Right? Again, is his support waning? Absolutely.
Exactly.
But this I don't see the culture. I don't, or not culture. I mean, amongst Black people, the culture is he's never been favorable. But I don't think people are really willing to go out and say, you know what, let's bring in Democrats. They're going to figure it out. I don't see that, and I'm not really sure where we're showing this approval rating. I'd have to be again. Trump's never had a high approval rating, a skyrocketing one. But at the end of the day, I truly I'm just again and globally, I'm not sure that there's this complete disdain for Trump, because there's people who do like what he's doing, and by people I'm speaking directly to countries. If we're going to go into geopolitics, they like this trade imbalance, because there are some folks who are not big fans of China. If we're really going to go deep into this, right? China has their hands everywhere, so there are folks who are excited about the opportunity for them to may perhaps get China out of their space, or again renegotiate deals. But again, yeah, I don't see this contempt from Trump. And again, I work in asset management. I work with money. And again, that's just I'm not hearing that right away. I think people are like, what is he doing? But I don't think there's this full on hate. And that's why we want to take polls with a grain of salt, because again, got to keep it real. I think we all thought Kamala Harris was the front runner, but you know, as we continue to learn more, internal data and internal polls showed that there was no chance. So I'm very skeptical on what we hear.
Could not agree more. I mean, you got to take these data points that have been known to be able to be manipulated with a grain of salt, like you said. One thing, though, that is glaring to me is when he was first elected, you know, he had roughly an approval rating of either 49 to 51%, which for him was really, really high. I forget the exact approval rating he had coming to the office during his first term. But to your point, he was wildly unpopular then. He's still unpopular now. I'm just curious if a year from now, what that approval rating will be and how much of MAGA will still be loyal to him. One thing that is constant in American politics is that every election is based off the economy. Every election.
1000%.
There might be other hot topic items like abortion, gay marriage, even a war or military conflict that we're in, but it's always been about the money. So, speaking of money, speaking of a precipitous drop in approval ratings, whether we're talking Donald Trump, and now at 39%, some polls at 33%, depending on what you look at. Let's talk about the precipitous drop of Shedeur Sanders in the draft. Now, I do believe we have the gift of hindsight with us recording this episode today, because we've allowed all the drama in the blowback and the leaked news reports and unanonymous sources to come forward. That being said, brothers, what are we doing about Shedeur? What's going on here?
I guess I'll jump in first. I don't know too much about it just because I'm not a college football head, and I did notice a lot of the race baiting with it. I never even caught a hint of any racial issues, with it, with Shedeur Sanders in general, even with Deion Sanders moving from, before this, from a HBCU to a white college. It looked like a money opportunity to me rather than a racial thing. And now with this, they're trying to play that race card again. I don't know, man.
Yeah, and here's my thing. First off, I think what happened to him was deplorable and unnecessary. I definitely believe and know that there was some sort of collusion. Boomer Esiason has let it be known that a lot of owners told their GMs and draft specialists to take Sanders' name off the board. Again, this report has been corroborated by Boomer Esiason, former NFL quarterback. So I bring this up because I don't believe Coach Deion, Primetime, is innocent in this. And I do think there are some lessons Shedeur could have taken from this. But it's not as if the NFL is immune to dealing with arrogant or cocky or entitled quarterbacks. That happens a lot. And I think people are glossing over the fact the biggest difference Shedeur has from those other previously cocky or arrogant quarterbacks is that his father is a direct threat to the white supremacy, to the system of white supremacy. Go ahead, Il.
Hey, peace. So I wanted to just add on, the brother Chronicles of Judah, he made a podcast and he said something very interesting about athletes. Most of these guys, when you talk about entitlement,
right,
by the time they're in high school, they're getting money, they're getting women, they're getting cars. So they're all entitled. Regardless of race, they're all entitled. This was nigger breaking. This was complete. Now, I'm not saying Deion and Shedeur misplayed their hand, but there are a lot of Chad Johnson, the night of the draft, he said that there was something going on behind the scenes. Boomer Esiason admitted it. I cannot remember anyone who is ranked so highly in terms of the Heisman draft going that late. And this is how racism works. I'm just looking at, nobody's going to come out and say, hey, I'm racist. It's those discussions that go on behind the scenes. And this is the stuff that plays out in corporate America and in different settings. When you have a brother, maybe he's a little too sharp in certain settings. It's happened to me. So I don't want to get too emotional about it, but I think that it's a sports conversation, yes, but there's racial undertones, and it's a really bad look for the NFL, in my opinion.
I agree. And one critical component of this whole conversation that I think people are saying intuitively but not saying explicitly is, it's the classic, if you're black, you have to be 10 times better just to get the same thing your white counterparts would. That now, guys, it's not missed on me. Cam Ward is obviously a black man, and he was taken #1 overall.
That's what I was gonna say, y'all. We can't forget about Cam Ward, which nobody seems to want to talk about.
Sure, but the relation with that is that Cam is the type of black person they're okay with. He has no threat to the white power structure because his father was not a transformational athlete. His father was not one that was creating generational wealth just off of his football playing career. His father is also not one who took a very flailing and out of gas program in Colorado football and turned it into much-see TV. That is what scares them the most. They don't care if a black person, at least in my estimation, is first-generation rich or blows their money on whips and chains and women and all this other sort of thing that gets 1,000 different baby mamas. I remember years ago, I think it was Antonio Cromartie on Hard Knocks with the Jets. And if it's not him, it was one of the DBs, literally had issues naming all of his children because he had that many kids. So to me, it strikes the nerve of, okay, I'm sure there's been other quarterbacks in the past that have bombed their draft day interviews. I'm not saying Shedeur was perfect, but They never had this sort of vitriol for those types of quarterbacks. Thoughts?
It's a two-part thing, right? I think it's two separate discussions. Let's talk about Coach Prime, right? Again, I'm a Colorado guy, man. Colorado's my squad. I grew up watching the Buffs, so happy to get him. We were just hoping he'd stay past 2 years, but Dion is very much so a threat to the power structure, right? And I live in SEC country, and there is no way in hell that Deion Sanders will ever get an SEC job. That is my personal opinion because he will recruit his ass off and will create a dynasty, and we know that it's not good for the larger power structure. That's my personal opinion, and that's why I think a place like Colorado, which lets him do everything that he wants to go out and build that program into what it is, because like you all mentioned before, it's a crappy program. I mean, this is where he's going. He can do whatever he wants. He can do no wrong in Colorado. Um, so again, I think Dion is a separate conversation. But I'm gonna speak to the football right for a little bit. And again, I share with you guys that I have insight into Colorado football. I've been on campus. I've had an opportunity to hang out in the facilities, and I've known a couple people who are on staff. And again, I'm not here to diss Shedeur, but let's just talk about the football aspect too. And I'm gonna be that guy. I'm gonna bring it up there. I mean, do I absolutely think that a confident uh, young black man is a problem? Absolutely. We can't be too confident. Period. That's just how it goes. But we speak to just the pure football. Again, we got to keep it real, y'all. And again, I've watched the game, and I've got insiders, man. There's a lot of concerns with the football, and I'm being that contrarian on purpose. I'm here to challenge brothers' thinking, though, man. I mean, when we look at this, is the Dion aspect. Dion helped his son through the hype. Dion understood what he needed to do to put his son in the best position possible to be drafted. But when we look at the measurables, man, the amount of sacks that Shedeur took, the decision making. I am calling out his decision making, man, because he cost us some games, y'all. I can't lie about that. That was glaring, and I think some of that plays a role. Now, do I think he should have fell to the fifth round? Absolutely not. And I think that's where they were trying to humble him. But again, I think it's a little bit of a combination of people not wanting the Dion impact, Dion overselling, overhyping up his son, as he should, by the way, which again has been done by white dads who got that pedigree. They got their kids in the league. I think we also we can't discount the football element. So I'll shut up for a little bit.
Oh, you're good. You're good. I think if we're gonna park right there and talk about the football element, I mean, let's look at the brother's stats. Over his college career, threw for over 14,000 passing yards, 134 touchdowns, and maintained a 70% completion rate. Those are bonkers type numbers. Now, to your point, it doesn't even matter if he's a transformational player. There's always ways to get better and improve. He did have a very bad offensive line, which to me makes it even more impressive. He was still
Oh yeah.
yeah. So, that being said, I guys like Mel Kiper, who literally this is what they've been doing for generations, not decades at this point. He's been doing it so long that he's been doing it for several generations. Even he was taken aback at how far he fell. But to your point, I completely agree. Look, there are valid criticisms and concerns over his football IQ, pocket presence, his size, 6'1", 212. That's a little bit underwhelming from a physicality standpoint. But I got to say, man, as a data guy, the numbers are there.
No, you're right. And again, I spoke to some of the football stuff, but I think the biggest issue, whether we want to call it, and I mean, somebody mentioned, the offensive line was horrible. And for that reason, I will say, I thought, to me, that just demonstrates that if you put him on a team that builds their offensive line, he can thrive. And again, that's the one thing that Colorado was missing. In between the trenches, they were awful. Right. But I think the biggest issue, and again, I still think that's where it's the Dion impact too, is Dion's coached his son since high school. And I had this conversation with somebody else. I don't know if it's about the quote unquote, or it could be. I mean, if you coach youth sports, there's this concept of daddy ball, right? Yep. And daddy ball is my son's a quarterback, and we're gonna run the offense through my son. It's the Bel Air Academy version of football, right? Give the ball to Will, put the ball in Shedeur's hand, no matter what. And while he balled out, man. I think the biggest concern for some people, and I think this will tie back into perception of confident black men, is this is a young man who and it's a good thing had a father who is well known in the league, got a ton of football wealth and knowledge. Perhaps this is another theory. Perhaps some coaches may be intimidated by that level of knowledge that this kid already possesses. So what can I teach this kid? What can I coach him? There was a coach that I thought would take a chance on that, and that was Mike Tomlin, who views what a coach can't do as a challenge and an opportunity to coach up. But yeah, I also think that's part of it too, because this kid's gotten mentoring from Tom Brady, and perhaps because he's who he is, he's so laid back. He's not going to jump up and down because you want him to agree with him.
Exactly.
Uh,
Go ahead, Il. Yeah, go ahead,
Oh,
Il.
please. Yeah, I want to add on in terms of Unc's comment about his intelligence. I think that that's something that people are concerned with regarding Dion, because we all know, what's excuse my mouth. It's not just him being a fast nigga that enabled him to be one of the best football players of all time. I over the years through his commentating and coaching, I realized that Dion is exceptionally intelligent.
Mhm.
And I think that is there's a factor, and a lot of people have spoke about this, that they were concerned about also Shedeur going to a team and then Dion possibly coming in, following him and coaching. And they could very well have the same impact that they had in Colorado and go to any franchise and disrupt the flow there. So I think that there is a little bit, but at the same time, I think some of this is also about some people having issues with Dion's personality, because Boomer Esiason and Dion used to go at it when they were both commentating, and there's a little bit of tension between the two. So I'll just land my plane there.
That's perfect. That's perfect. And look, we're all in agreement that a strong black father is the biggest fear in the system of white supremacy. Speaking of the intelligence of Dion, he was smart enough when he got to Colorado to not simply take a coach's salary, which is still several millions of dollars per year, but also get a piece of all the personal branding and merchandise. And guys, for the past 2 years, Colorado has been must-see football. So you better believe people are buying the hoodies and the jerseys and the hats and the sweatsuits and the socks and the sneakers, because I ain't gonna lie, they did look fresh on Saturdays when they were playing. But the fact that this black man had the wherewithal not to just take the money up front and run, but to say, I want a piece of the ownership pie, that is the true threat in my estimation.
With that element, it kind of changes my question. Well, not really. I'll ask you guys anyway. Because of Deion Sanders, we can't separate the father from the son. So I want to ask you guys, especially Unc, since he's the Colorado fan, and I mean y'all are all informed in general. What do y'all think of Shedeur, the man himself? Because I think that may give some answers as to why he just leaves a bad taste in people's mouth. Pause.
No, again, I already said it, man. I just think, the fact that he's very intelligent and he's very calm and confident, I think perhaps that does play a role. And I mean, that probably speaks to everything that you guys have already said. But I think the idea that you're dealing with a kid who could be, I don't know how he is in the on the X's and O's and the whiteboard, but I believe he's a smart kid, right? He makes plays. He sees the field. He gets a high grade from Tom Brady. And of course we just got to keep it real. We know how black men are treated. I think perhaps that level of confidence and intellect could intimidate a coach, right? A
I'm
QB coach who might be new and not really ready to jump in and maybe struggle with who may struggle with not being able to you know fully coach a kid the way a Cam Ward maybe, who's just not on his level mentally. Perhaps I'm throwing that out there as being speculative.
I'm gonna add some pushback. I don't think that's enough of a reason to dislike him. Those are all attributes to for people to like him. So obviously, other than his father, kind of being a bit of a pest, what is it about Shedeur the man that makes people go basically the entire NFL go no? I don't think it has to do with your intelligence, the money you come from. We're used to that. Even other black players come from parents who are, who have money. Well, what is it about Shedeur the man that we don't care about who your dad is, whatever, just no?
I think it is the cockiness and the bravado. If they've already had some preconceived notion that Coach Sanders was going to bombard the next team administration and cause all this drama, I think they see that as an extension via his son. Again, I think this was, I'm sorry, more about Dion than it was about Shedeur. But they can't get to Dion. They can get to Shedeur. Scoon, what you got to say about this, brother?
I'm mostly going to elucidate a little bit on your point. So, based on his relationship with Dion being his son, it kind of raises a question, or it can, like, again, speculating. So, for owners, coaches, all administrative / authoritative people, quote unquote, towards Shedeur, I guess at some point the question of can I put a leash on him is going to pop up.
There it is.
And I don't know whether or not they can confidently project an answer. And this is something that you can have in the athletic space. That's a lot more common because the black men there, especially ones of high accomplishment and intelligence, are super visible. And then there's corporate derivatives of this. There are blue collar derivatives of this. I've seen that just in general.
Oh, 100%, 100%. And then, lastly on this topic, I remember I was always a sucker, and I still am, for like a good inspirational sports movie. So one of my favorite corny, cheesy underdog sports movies is Coach Carter. And I remember there was this scene where, I don't know, I've heard this quote my entire life. I don't know who said it, but I did a quick Google. The quote is, "Our deepest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure." I believe the deepest fear of a lot of these white-owned, ran organizations is their inadequacy being exposed by a brother. So it just, here's where I'm at. I'm bringing it up in the relevance to this topic, though. How does this relate to our everyday existence as brothers maneuvering in corporate America? There's not a lot of us. I think I saw a stat the other day that says 22% of black men have a college education. Now, I'm not one to say that you're nothing or you're not intelligent if you don't have an education. As personally, I think as Americans, we put too much emphasis on the degrees and papers. However, if you are the only brother in the room, and I remember Unc was alluding to this earlier, and you're sharp, and you're charming, and you're charismatic, and you're great at what you do, that puts a target on your back, right?
Absolutely, man. I'll let other brothers jump in because I've been talking a lot, but 1000%. Y'all jump in before I do, but yeah, let me shut up.
I think to add to what you both are saying, something called the Peter Principle ends up getting exposed. That's something that being held to a ridiculously high with the expectation of failing standard and going beyond that will expose to the people around you, because in the event that they can't meet then any capacity, that demonstrates incompetence on their end.
100%. And look, at this point, if this whole situation is not a dead giveaway wake-up call to some people in the black community of the fear they have of a black man that does right by himself, that does right by his family, I don't know what will. Understand, Coach Sanders does not have a bunch of illegitimate children. Even though he went through a divorce with Pilar, his ex-wife, he still made sure all of his children were set up for life. Coach Prime is a grandfather now. His grandchild will never have to work again.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And again, that's just all with one generation. I believe, with quarterback being the most high-profile position in the most popular sport in our nation, and we are the wealthiest nation for now, that poses a serious economic threat. Because you have a young brother that has seen his father do it, that has within him not only the ability to work hard and earn a living, but take that living and flip it to grow it by 10x, 20x more in value. That to me is what scares them the most. The fact that this young brother has seen the blueprint and the template and the model, that Dion isn't some old broke down man. No, he still very much has his faculties and can advise his son of how to flip this money and make it even more. That being said, speaking of big wake-up calls, let's talk about our favorite Unc outside of the Unc on this chat.
Oh no.
Shannon.
Hey, Shay.
Ski up. I don't know about that one. Ski up.
Ski up.
Guys, what's going on with that brother, man? Let me open up and give you my opinion on this. I don't care. All
yeah.
Right? And for people trying to pile on because she's so young and he's a lot older, I don't really even care about that. As long as she's legal, do what you do. I mean, Leonardo DiCaprio, I don't think he messes with chicks that are over the age of 24. Who are some other people that are like, oh, Bill Belichick got him a super young PYT. What do you think? Go ahead, Scoon.
Yeah, I'm gonna keep it real simple. That was funny with Belichick and his situation. I think he's like defending her based on some commentary on a book that he wrote recently. That was something I saw online. But that aside, the magic question is, was Unc Shay Shay on Epstein Island's list?
Oh Lord.
I hope not. I
don't think he was. So
right.
if he ain't there and he ain't getting grilled like it. Like if the people on there aren't getting grilled like him, no, it's none. It's just sensationalism.
I don't know about that one. I don't know if Shannon Sharpe was of prominence, man, when that was going down. And again, I'm not completely discounting that. I think the rise of Shannon Sharpe is relatively recent, man. And again, right. I think like what Brother MeIsMe said, hey, I don't care what people do in their private lives. And again, if you a old cat and you out there buying it, cool. That's none of my business. But I think and again, all this judgment, actually, I will speak to this. It bothers me a lot, man. People are so righteous, and it reeks of just haterism, lack of better words. But I mean, in terms of Shannon Shay, man, I mean the bigger thing that also drives me crazy is the fact that he is getting extorted, and we're focused on the wrong things, right? The brother got set up. He was seen as food, seen as kind of goofy, and a woman just came into his life and completely attempted to finesse him with the help of a lawyer who is known for this stuff. It's driving me crazy that, again, people in the Black community in these social media streets are not zeroed in on the fact that this is another Black man that's getting taken down. Yes, could Unc have done different things? Should he have been more situationally aware? Absolutely. But nonetheless, he is the victim in this situation. So that's just what's throwing me off.
Completely agree.
Yeah.
Go ahead, brother.
I was just gonna add on. Yeah, those are good points. But and I'm just worried about what happens after you have a situation like this where this girl sets him up and she's going to walk away with something. I think that he offered her 10 million, which is crazy, but it seems like this is, and she turned that down. So it's like, what happens afterward here? I think this is a continuation. You have this brother Anthony Edwards who, he got up with his sister. She is beautiful, but she's completely insane. So it just it seems like if you are a brother who has anything of value, you have to really protect yourself. Seems like the only athlete I can remember really doing this to an excessive degree was Derek Jeter, because I remember living in New York and there were stories about women going out with him, and he would make them sign NDAs when they came back to his house.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, that level of, I don't want to say scrutiny, but, caution needs to be there.
Completely agree. And look, for some commentators or social media whores, they're acting like this $10 million offer as some sort of smoking gun and for sure indictment of his guilt. And I don't think that's true.
No,
Look,
not at all.
This brother was about to sign $100 million deal. Look, if you tell me I'll give you $100 million, if you give up $10 million, I'll take that investment all day. It just seems like people want to see him go down. Speaking of, have you all ever noticed, unfortunately, whenever a brother is getting hemmed up, especially by white women, not all, but some black women tend to have some sort of glee about the situation?
It's not, God, look, I'll say it. Yes, all of them do. Look, I'll be the one to say it because I even talked to my wife about this. And the first thing that she mentioned was the lady's nationality or skin tone. Oh, it's a white woman, right? I'm like, what? Are you not paying attention? And I have to bring it back to my wife. I said, imagine if that was your son or your brother.
Exactly.
Are we going to be fixated on that, or or the fact that this is somebody trying to extort someone that we love for money, right? When they were involved in a consensual act. So no, I'll be the guy to say I don't care if I get hate. A lot of black women are on this. Oh well, you should have been messing with white girls. There we go.
Yeah, you try not to conflate issues and jumble them all together, but I cannot help but thinking of two recent incidents where it seemed like our own people were celebrating on social media that brothers getting hemmed up. The first was Kevin Samuel's death.
Oh yeah,
women celebrating, which was just disgusting. This man never robbed, raped, or killed anyone, yet you're treating him as if some terrible, violent warlord of a dictator has finally got caught and was executed. No, he just said things you didn't like. At the very worst, you can accuse him of being a preeminent shit talker, but it didn't warrant you being happy that he died or rooting for his death. And ultimately, guys, this to me reminds me of a book that I read years ago called The $40 Million Slave. You guys familiar?
I haven't read that.
Yeah, so it's $40 Million Slaves, The Rise, Fall, Redemption of the Black Athlete by William C. Roden. And essentially, it's a close examination of drawing parallels between the plantation and our current modern day sports. Yes, you give them something as a reward. Obviously, it's hard for a lot of people to reconcile $40 million as a salary and being a slave. They sound very much the antithesis of one another. However, when that money comes with so many stipulations that you can't even really help the community that you want to help, and I'll get back to why you can't help them shortly here. It then starts to make sense.
Yeah, golden shackles for real.
Yeah.
Yep. And look, one of the reasons why I say that is because Colin Kaepernick is a great example. Very much in his prime, before he got blackballed. Even with him getting advice from a military veteran that said, hey, the best thing you can do to be respectful during the anthem is take a knee, it still was not enough. They took his job from him. So to me, it's kind of like the NFL saying, boy, we'll give you a few dollars because it ain't nothing to us. We're billionaires. But as soon as you cross that line, we'll cut that off. So it almost doesn't seem like a free $40 million. It's a $40 million with a lot of stipulations.
Oh yeah. Shout out to Cap, man. He's the noobs as well, man. But yeah, he took a stand, man, and lost a lot. And he actually didn't take a stand. And I know brothers got to jump in on this one, but yeah, it was interesting to see that something symbolic, something respectful was twisted. Where you had the likes of Marshawn Lynch sitting on the bench during the anthem. It's just interesting how that goes. But nonetheless, you can't be too loud. You can't talk too much. You can't say too much of the wrong thing when you're a black man in the spotlight.
Right. And it's almost as if they can tolerate you being black. They can tolerate you being black and loud, but they cannot tolerate you being black, loud, and powerful. Because again, look, this is kind of intertwined with the Shannon Sharpe and Shedeur Sanders news stories this week. There have been players that have been drafted and given the biggest of biggest contracts that have had drug charges, alcohol charges, domestic violence charges, sexual assault allegation, rape allegations, and it does not keep their team from giving them chance after chance after chance. Yet you have a brother like a Shannon Sharpe, a brother like Coach Dion, a brother like Shedeur Sanders getting hemmed up because they're not coming to the table with all that baggage of seriously being able to up in the system. Go ahead, Ill. You're on mute, by the way, brother. Okay. So speaking of that, you know, I opened up talking about some Black women on social media kind of bragging almost. You should listen to Black women. You should have listened to us. Listen when the Black women talk. Scoon, talk to us about this digital plantation, man. Define that for us and how does it correlate?
Thank you. So the digital plantation, I would say that is the medium for controlling, coordinating, and managing the general Black male like thought and discourse over like online platforms. We can look at everything from our TV shows, podcasts, ads, social media posts, pages, memes, and the list goes on. But just the coalescence and accumulation of just messaging and content that signals to Black men to behave within a certain set of behaviors, whether that be how we're looking at each other in terms of like valuing accomplishments, what it looks like to be successful, what does it look like to be the average person. Like a lot of those things are not fully determined by us. And pretty much every area where we don't have control, but there is control administered to us, is the bedrock of the digital plantation. Everything you guys spoke of would probably be like instances of it some way, somehow in action.
Completely agree. And again, reoccurring theme. So you've been warned. The more things change, the more they stay the same. Correct. We're all familiar with the Willie Lynch letter, but one component of the Willie Lynch letter was to instill within the Black woman a resentment towards the Black man because he couldn't protect her at least the way she thought she should have been protected, even though Black men were just as much raped, and they really were during slavery as Black men.
Yeah.
A lot of times to prove a point to the Black woman that the only man on this plantation is me, the white master. The Black males are just that. They're not men, though. They're males. They're up for penetration grabs, too. That being said, on the plantation, oftentimes, they put Black women in charge. Big mama. And it seems to be the same thing here with this digital plantation. It's almost like white supremacy is winking a nod for Black women to keep brothers in check. And again, I want to emphasize, I'm not saying all Black women, but all you need is a few to make it really disaffective. Scoon, your response, sir.
I'll add some context to that. There was a period in time in the antebellum South where the majority head of households that did operate like slave owning ops were headed by Black women, whether by inheritance through marriage or through parental, like a daughter would inherit the estate, and things kept going. So that speaks a lot to what you're saying. I would say that kind of like low-key messaging in Hollywood, like the ethnicity woman with the white pro tag kind of stuff. Like I've seen a little bit more of that in like the recent decade, even though I don't watch movies and the like. But yeah, I'm seeing more of that. Middle management, interestingly enough, is having a growing population of Black women in there, and they can fulfill that purpose. Not saying that they do. And even more interestingly enough, in my own life, I have 6 sisters. I want to say at least half of them work in middle management and do operate in that capacity for men and women alike.
And to build on this digital plantation rule set, or thought set, guys, do we think, even though we don't like what Shannon Sharpe's going through, do we kind of feel like he should have known better? Like that's also a sentiment I'm seeing on social media. It's like, hey, I'm not happy this is happening, but Unc, how could you not see this coming a mile away? Why are you? Yeah, go ahead.
I just want to. I don't know. I think there's a little bit of hypocrisy there. She's fairly attractive. I mean, she's not a dime or anything, but she's a pretty young lady. I mean, it was consensual sex,
right?
And there's nothing wrong with that. the bottom line is that he couldn't have known if she has a camera in the room or something like that. And we've all, I mean, look, I don't know about y'all, but I've, I engaged in rough sex before. So it's like, whatever goes down, it goes down. Some women like to be choked, some women like their hair pulled. If she's going to chop that video up and submit that to an attorney, that's kind of grimy, bro. That's real grimy.
Absolutely.
100%, 100%. I mean, and even the phone recording that was released seemed somewhat doctored or edited or spliced or something. It just, I just don't think that's the full story. Hey, is there any truth to claims that he was arrested twice for some sort of violence against women, like, about 20, 25 years ago? Like, is there any, have you guys have heard about that?
I haven't, but I'm sure things will start to surface.
Yeah.
Jason,
Mhm.
go ahead, Scoon.
No, I was gonna say something will surface, and that confirms the nature of this being a diversionary tactic.
No, I was gonna add on Jason Whitlock, who doesn't like Sharpe. He just mentioned that he had worked with them, and there had been some issues regarding HR. And so I don't know if Shannon has a history of maybe hugging ladies too aggressively or whatever the case may be, but it sounds like he has a little bit of history of being a little overtly aggressive, but I don't think it's anything. He didn't rape anyone. I'm gonna put that out there.
Yeah, and look, at the time of this recording, we don't know if those stories are even corroborated or if they're just tabloid stuff. But I have a hard time believing that CBS, where he worked before he got onto NFL Network, where he worked before he got on to Fox, and where he got on before now he's at ESPN, even though he's taking a temporary leave of absence. I have a very hard time that these huge mega media conglomerates would not look into that past and know about that if it is true.
Yeah.
I have a very hard time believing that. Maybe he could get away with it one time under one media outlet, but I seriously doubt what it says. CBS, Fox,
yeah.
Doubt it, man. No.
I just think, again, it speaks to, the two things. When you're dealing with a woman in that scenario, you've got to be more situationally aware. It goes back to the point we made last podcast, avoiding the finesse, but being realistic too. I mean, when you're dealing with, again, I think it's whack that people are just so fixated on him being with a younger woman and her being a white woman. But let's just be completely honest. When you have that type of gap in a relationship, what is there to be had? Like, what type of relationship are we talking about? It's typically we getting it on. And brother Corey Holcomb has some funny points. I don't know if y'all check out the 5150 show. It's hilarious. Yes. But again, at the end of the day, yeah, I mean, this is a sexual relationship. And I think sometimes, again, it's not right. But I think when you get in those situations with women, your judgment at times gets clouded. Do I think he deserved that? Absolutely not. But I do have to say, man, come on, brother. We got to make sure that, we dotting our I's and crossing our T's. Those NDAs are a real thing. Think he just got caught slipping, man. But yeah, that's my thoughts on that stuff, man. And then going back to the work aspect too, you just mentioned Shannon Sharpe, potentially having HR issues. We also have to be careful professionally with how we interact with women, and let's keep it real, specifically white women. I've managed white women, and I don't necessarily trust white women because we are scrutinized in a way, man. My damn nose, quote unquote, flared, and that was viewed as a threat once because I was holding her accountable. Yeah, holding a white woman accountable, which again, black man's not supposed to do. But in order to go into self-preservation mode, he came up with all these frivolous allegations to make me seem like I was aggressive. So we have to be situationally aware when we're interacting with people. And again, there's a lack of trust I have for milk of magnesia, in professional environments or relationship, because again, if there's an opportunity or if there's a situation where they have to protect themselves, again, it's your word against hers, and this society is not designed to trust our word first. We have to go through hoops and hell before we are proven innocent. And again, I've experienced it professionally. You can hear it a little bit in my voice. I'm frustrated by the situation.
Sure.
I've moved on. That was well over 5 years ago, but people were at my neck because it was a position that they wanted.
But you know, you can't hold white women accountable, and it goes back to the DEI shit when they're incompetent in some situations or lacking in this situation with the woman. They're going to use what they have, that white femininity, to get what they need.
Yeah, and that is another instance of the Peter Principle in action, and you kind of represented probably like the textbook example of what it looks like for a black man to expose that while executing on what you need to be on.
Yeah, and ultimately, I hearken back to Proverbs that just, I think in the first few chapters, it's a father telling his son, imploring him to run away from the adulterous woman, to run away from the immoral woman. I think it says her lips are as sweet as honey and her mouth is smooth as oil. Wow. So, you know, hindsight's 2020. None of us were in that situation. I ain't gonna lie, she is fine, and I think his judgment just got clouded. But I will say too, I heard that 5150 show with Corey, and I agree with him. What the hell are you, as a 56-year-old man, gonna talk to a 19-year-old? Y'all ain't got nothing. Y'all have nothing to talk about.
It's business, the right business. If we're talking right, I mean, yeah, ain't no talking. Yeah, and we ain't 50 in our 50s, but god dang, no.
Well, that's right. Ain't no talking going on. A lot of clapping.
I mean, come on now. If you're gonna engage in that type of stuff, because I'm sure he was breaking off money. Come on now.
Right.
Yeah, you falling in love. Come on, bro.
And essentially,
you messing up the game.
She is and was a prostitute, correct? Like, only let's call it
other way around. He'd be the John in the equation.
He's the John, but it's that these OnlyFans girls, like, I know they call it OnlyFans model, they try to pretty it up, but it's all prostitution, is it not?
All right, so I'll break down some nuance. I would say they're probably like dysfunctional escorts at best. I know some, like, it's interesting because again, I live over in like the New York tri-state area, so I know the OF creators that are not making that kind of money, and I guess mental condition is kind of like they're all the same mentally in a way or another. So not surprised that she would fumble by getting a little too greedy. Seen it.
Yeah, and also I find it hard to believe that if you're offered $10 million, you don't take that.
Right.
Unless they're overplaying their hand, thinking that they have something to bump that up. But
that's the fumble. That's literally the fumble. It's the delusion and the big-headed shit.
Yeah, that was the fumble. Yeah.
Do you all think that him taking a step away from ESPN was truly his own?
No.
Idea?
No.
Okay.
No, that was
No.
definitely for us. They asked him to step down.
That was that was advised. Yeah.
But the good news is that, I mean, he said in the statement, I'll be back, before the start of the NFL season. So if it was ESPN's idea, I mean, at least they're not just cutting bait indefinitely. They're saying, no, let's let this cool down. Let's make sure you're innocent. Then we'll think about you.
And think about this for a little bit too, man. I mean, I think he does need to let it cool down. But I mean, and again, I'm still in talking points from another show, but Unc had a similar issue with the Instagram Live. Like, Unc got to chill. Yeah. Like, it's something called discretion, right? When you getting down, whatever you're doing, you got to have some discretion, though. That's the other thing. And so I think, that there's a timeout that is warranted, because you messing up the brand, you messing up the money. Let's chill out. Let's come out strong. Let's say you've worked through some things and you come back. If we writing the story the right way, you're exonerated. You get past all this shit. Come on, Unc. But you can't do it.
And he admitted to doing the Instagram Live thing on purpose whenever he was talking to Chad Ochocinco.
So like a rollout?
Yeah, it wasn't necessarily a rollout. It was around the time when people on Twitter were calling him homosexual. Right. So he kind of he leaked, quote unquote, leaked that to kind of prove them wrong.
It's just stupid.
It is.
It's almost like what happened with Paul Pierce. Him getting caught up with the strippers live. I think people were just like, it's a little it's sloppy. And it's not. I don't think any of us think that Shannon actually raped this woman. We're just saying. I think a lot of people were disappointed in him.
Oh yeah.
And I think that's the main thing. We're just like, at that point in your life, like, I'm 47. I don't think I would date anything later than like mid-20s right now, man. And I just have to question. I'm not trying to be hypocritical, but just like 19 years old is a little young.
No, it's a little young, but it's also a lot legal. Go ahead.
It's legal. Yeah. It's legal, and if you had 100+ million, I don't know how much Shannon Sharpe is worth before the deal, but just tens of millions, and you're in that environment, and you've always been in that type of white environment since college, as an athlete, I think it's just a completely different mentality and taste that he has.
There you go. That's true. Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
I just don't know why you would. I don't know why you would just. I mean, again, call me crazy, but why just one? Why get yourself wrapped around the finger of one woman when you got that power? That's the other thing I think about too. That's what I'm like, and some people make jokes about it, but I think Shannon in so many ways is new to this. And what I mean by that is you got a gorgeous woman showing interest in you at 55. You getting a little full of yourself, brother. And I don't know. I just don't see. I just don't see that relationship being. I just don't understand how that can take you down. You're not playing it right, in my opinion.
Right,
you know what I mean?
No, that's it right there. I think he's unfamiliar with like modern sugar baby meta, because a lot of the stuff that she did is like you can almost go on YouTube and pick up notes on that shit.
I heard. I'm sorry. Look at that chat. Wow, boy, wow. Speaking of Corey Holcomb 5150 show, when Rizza Islam was on there, I like what he said in terms of the new job description for a lot of lazy ladies who are lazy is to get a lawsuit going, or get pregnant, or get pregnant. That is, look, there's nothing new under the sun. We've always known that, but it is a refreshing, sobering reminder that for a lot of people, you being the op is the goal. You being caught lacking is the goal. So let me ask you guys this: does Shannon make it out of this?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay. He does make
absolutely.
Yeah, assuming nothing else is out there. Again, we're hearing these random things pop up with the HR stuff. Assuming nothing significant is out there, yeah, I think this is something he can recover from, because on its surface, once you get outside of social media and outrage, this is nothing but an extortion attempt. So
I don't think it happens this year, but I think he'll do like Paul Pierce. It took him a few years to come back and swing back into the rotation of commentating. Same thing with Shannon Sharpe. As long as there's no actual rape charge, and people, and I think people understand he's just being extorted. A year or two from now, nobody's going to talk about this.
Normally, it would be in a year. Like, you are right. Normally, it would, but with how everyone's attention span and everything like that is, I think there's a reason why he said he'll be back for the football season. Because literally,
good point.
By the end of the summer, between now and the end of summer, there will be at least two more controversial things. Everyone's gonna forget about it by the end of the summer.
We were just talking about this, I think maybe a podcast or two ago, where there's like all these like sensationalism stories that are diverting our attention.
1,000%.
You mentioned that. So that's a good point.
So that contributes to the more distributed version of the plantation, which is like preventing us from really aligning on stuff on a community level. Like each of these, you said it yourself, Illmatical. Whenever you remind us not to be too emotional with the content that we do observe, a lot of it is to stay outside of that kind of control loop.
Right.
Folks, and we see in our regular lives, and like you said, particularly on social media, you'll see the outrage, the irritation, the negative sentiment super concentrated. But once you get off, it's a different ballgame. So that's another part of digital plantation that I think a lot of people are losing awareness of, is that you can unplug. And I guess that's where things like Terminally Online and the like kind of start coming from.
I'll tell you one thing, though. With all the lawsuits that happened at Fox Sports, Roy Taylor, Skip Bayless, and Shannon was obviously there. That seems like a gnarly place to work, man. Like, it's going down in the break room in the parking lot. every day, all day, everywhere. I mean, I'm like, goodness gracious. When I hear some of these stories, it's insane, man. But final thought, fellas. Let's go around the horn. Final thought, man, on the news of the day. Final thought on Shedeur. Final thought on Shannon. Final thought on this digital plantation. Scoon, lead us home, man. Where were you at?
I think overall we have discussed and observed a bunch of things going on that kind of restrict our image in the public eye more often than not, and discussing and bringing up how it's working under the hood prevents us from kind of like falling for, I guess, the long con of black man bad, whatever. Like we still acknowledge these men as men of substance and value, and they either perceived incorrectly or they just made some bad moves, and we move on.
Nah, yeah, man. Again, yeah, brother, fantastic job, man. With driving the conversation. Just speaking back to the economy, man, and what's happening in the White House, y'all. Man, I know there's a lot of hysteria. A lot of people are really feeling it, but we got to be very careful with how much media we are consuming on a day-to-day basis. I think we've got to take a little bit of a step back, but also try to find neutral um, outlets where you can get some real insight and start reading like what's happening with the executive orders, what's happening with some of the policy. Because the flip side, though, I know there's a lot of, let's call it what it is, Trump derangement syndrome. There are opportunities that are going to arise, right, from this administration, whether we like it or not. And I think, again, no brothers will accuse me of being a Republican here, but it's just true, man. And BGS has made reference to this statement. There's no solutions. There's only trade-offs, right?
Mm-hmm.
What opportunities are going to be out there for Black people, right? Regardless of how you feel, find a way to capitalize on that. So that's all I got.
Oh, good points. Again, good show, MeIsMe, and everyone. Thank you guys for your input. I think that these situations that are happening, definitely we need to be reminded to constantly be on our square. A young lady could throw you off your square, and then you get hit with a rape charge, and 10 years of your life are gone. So just be mindful. And it's unfortunate you mentioned that you hinted on that we touched on it briefly, the disdain that many, not all, but some Black women have for us. And we're pretty much all we have right now. So when we're in those corporate environments, when we're at work, academic environments, we are on our own. So just be mindful. That's all. Peace.
And Brolic, before I close this out, give us your final thought, man.
Just like Scoon just said, man, amazing build. Y'all are really working out these kinks, man. It seems like a completely different show than the first two, man. This is incredible, man. But I hope Shedeur plays at least one snap, man. That's all I gotta say.
Family, it's been a great week from the digital airwaves. This has been your boy MeIsMe, Unc, Scoon, Brolic, and Illmatical. This has been the Brotherly Exchange.